Beatrice, Miles, Serena, Walter, Olivia, Abernathy. The rain has been relentless this November, drumming against the tall, mullioned windows of Ashworth Manor like persistent, unwelcome memories. 71 years. That's the tally of my existence, 4 decades of which have been spent patrolling the echoing corridors and tending the manicured, yet somehow melancholic gardens of this house. Walter, my late husband, didn't just build Ashworth, he curated it, filled it with the imposing weight of his success, the shadows of his secrets, and the gleam of his collections. Florentine art, weighty first editions bound in somber leather, clocks that ticked with unnerving precision. He was a man of quiet, intense passions, pursued with the same guarded methodology he applied to his labyrinthine business affairs I was rarely privy to. "No need to trouble your pretty head, Bee," he'd murmur, patting my hand, a gesture meant to be affectionate, but always feeling vaguely dismissive. His death a year ago now was as sudden and jarring as a clock stopping mid-tick. A fall, they said, down the grand oak staircase in the entrance hall, the one with the intricately carved newel posts he'd imported from a decaying English manor. Accidental, the coroner ruled swiftly, citing the newly applied lemon polish, a brand Serena, my nephew's wife, had insisted the housekeeper use, as the likely culprit. A tragically mundane end for a man whose life seemed anything but. Yet, sometimes, drifting in that disorienting space between sleep and wakefulness, the sound replays itself in my mind, not just a thud, but a sharp crack, a gasp cut short, then a final, echoing thump that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. An acoustic trick of grief, I told myself. Nothing more. Grief attracts predators disguised as caregivers. My nephew Miles, Emily's boy, inheriting my sister's charm, but none of her innate kindness, and his wife Serena descended upon Ashworth with the swiftness of vultures circling. Their concern was a suffocating blanket. "Aunt Bee, you simply cannot manage this enormous place alone," Miles had declared, his handsome face usually set in lines of faint, nothing dialect. "It's too much, too isolated. What if something happened?" Serena, sleek and watchful as a lynx, her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch the skin around her cool blue eyes, echoed his sentiments. "Beatrice, darling, Miles is absolutely right. You need family. We'll move into the guest house right away, cook for you, manage the bills, handle the lawyers, just until you feel stronger." I felt fractured, adrift in the vast, echoing silence Walter's absence had created. He had been a demanding husband, secretive and often emotionally distant, but his presence had been the axis around which my life revolved for 40 years. Miles and Serena, my only remaining close relatives. Olivia, their 16-year-old daughter, a creature of sullen silences and perpetual phone-gazing, was a peripheral presence, rarely emerging from the guest house. So I acquiesced. I let them fill the void, mistaking their invasive efficiency for affection, their control for comfort. Their campaign began subtly, targeting my perceived weaknesses, my arthritis, a mild affliction Walter had always accommodated. "Sit down, Bee, I'll fetch that," became their primary lever. The grand staircase, with its polished oak treads, seemed steeper each day. "This is madness, Aunt Bee," Miles insisted one morning. Observing my slow descent, "We must move your bedroom downstairs to the morning room. It's a sunny, closer to the kitchen, much more practical." "I like my room," I repeated firmly, clinging to that small piece of territory. The upstairs suite, with its familiar scent of lavender and beeswax, its wide windows overlooking the rose garden Walter had planted for me, was my last bastion. Miles sighed, a theatrical sound of loving exasperation. He exchanged that fleeting glance with Serena, the one that spoke volumes. Stubborn, difficult, needs managing. All right, Aunt Bee, but at least allow me to put down some proper non-slip treads, and perhaps a second handrail. Wouldn't want another accident like Walter's. The comparison, dropped so casually, landed like a stone in my stomach. The accident came shortly after. I was hurrying down for breakfast. Serena insisted on punctual meals, another small assertion of control, when my heel snagged violently. The heavy Isfahan runner at the top landing, Walter's pride, its intricate patterns now seeming to writhe beneath my feet, was definitely loose, its edge curled like a snare. I pitched forward into space, a cry tearing from my throat. Only a desperate lunge, a frantic scrabbling grab at the ornately carved newel post, saved me from tumbling down the same flight of stairs that had claimed my husband. My heart slammed against my ribs like a trapped bird. Miles materialized at the bottom, his face a mask of shock that didn't quite reach his eyes. Aunt Bee, my God, are you hurt? He bounded up the stairs. That damned rug. I'll fire that incompetent housekeeper. Are you sure you're all right? His hands hovered, fussing, straightening my robe, his touch feeling strangely impersonal. I'm fine, Miles, I managed, my voice trembling, leaning heavily against the post. Just startled. But I wasn't fine. The timing, the loose rug, the flicker I'd seen in his eyes before, it felt sickeningly orchestrated, an accident waiting to happen, or perhaps an accident encouraged to happen. The paranoia, I chided myself. It's the grief, but the rug remained unfixed, a silent daily threat I learned to navigate with extreme caution. Serena's front was the medical one. My mild heart and anxiety medication prescribed by Dr. Peterson after Walter's death became her special project. Beatrice, darling, juggling these pills on top of everything else, it's too much, she declared, sweeping the amber bottles off my nightstand with an air of taking charge of a dangerous situation. Let Serena handle it. Less stress for you. A complex multi-compartment pill organizer appeared. Each Sunday evening, Serena performed the ritual, her slender fingers moving with swift, almost sterile precision. Beta Blacker, low dose, morning and evening, she'd murmur, snapping compartments shut. Mild anti-anxiety for bedtime, all sorted. It felt demeaning, reducing my autonomy to a child's level. But the path of least resistance seemed wiser than open conflict. So I accepted the plastic box each morning, swallowed the pills under her watchful eye, pretending compliance while a cold knot of unease tightened steadily within me. Ashworth Manor, which had once felt like a symbol of Walter's success and our shared life, began to feel like a prison. A beautifully appointed one, certainly, filled with museum-quilled furniture and art that seemed to watch me with cold, indifferent eyes, but a prison nonetheless. Miles and Serena controlled the keys, the schedule, the flow of information. My mail was vetted by my calls were screened. Just protecting you from nuisance callers, darling. Visitors became rare. Old friends who called were politely but firmly told I was resting or not up to company. My world shrank, contracting to the boundaries of the estate walls. Did she know? Was she complicit in her silence? The doubt they sowed about my memory took root in the fertile ground of my grief and isolation. Did I forget that conversation? Did I misplace that silver locket Walter gave me? Was I imagining Serena's cool dismissal, Miles's forced smiles? Gaslighting is a subtle poison. It mimics the natural anxieties of aging and loss, making you question your own perceptions, your own sanity. I found myself double-checking conversations in my head, scrutinizing my own actions, fearing the moments of genuine forgetfulness that do come with age, terrified they would be seized upon as further proof of my decline. Then came the night the whispers became shouts, tearing through the carefully constructed facade of their care. Insomnia had become my unwelcome companion. The house, usually silent after Miles and Serena retired, seemed alive with furtive sounds that night. A floorboard creaking in the supposedly empty library wing, the faint click of a door. Driven by a restlessness that bordered on dread, I slipped out of bed, bypassing the creaky third step Walter never fixed, and crept towards the library. The heavy oak door, usually firmly shut, was slightly ajar, a sliver of light escaping, along with their voices, low, urgent, stripped bare of pretense. "I cannot sustain this, Miles." Serena's voice was a viper's hiss, sharp with fury. "Your investments have failed again. Marco is demanding payment by the end of the month, and you know what he's capable of. We need Walter's real contingency fund, the one Abernathy doesn't know about. It has to be here. And I keep telling you I can't find it." Miles sounded desperate, hunted. "I've searched everywhere. The safe, the hidden compartments in the desk, behind the bookshelves. Nothing. Just dusty old books and papers. Maybe Walter moved it? Maybe he destroyed it before." "Don't be an idiot. Walter never destroyed assets, he hid them. He was paranoid. The ledgers must exist. The access codes. The bearer bonds he hinted at. It's here, Miles, in this mausoleum. And she," her voice hinted with pure venom, "is the only obstacle. Abernathy is sniffing around. We need to accelerate things." "What are you suggesting?" Miles asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm suggesting," Serena replied, her tone turning glacial, "that another accident might be necessary. A more permanent one this time, like Walter's. A fall, perhaps, or maybe an overdose. Dr. Evans can sign off on heart failure exacerbated by confusion. He's already documented her cognitive decline thanks to my reports and the adjusted medication. He owes us for keeping quiet about his little gambling problem. One more push, Miles? Then everything, the house, the art, the bond, everything is ours. We just need to be bolder." A long silence followed, broken only by the frantic hammering of my own heart. Then Miles's voice, resigned, cold, "Fine, but it has to look convincing. No mistakes this time." I recoiled, pressing myself flat against the cold wall, nausea churning in my stomach. Murder. They were plotting my murder as casually as they discussed dinner menus. Walter's death wasn't accidental. It was their first success. The polish, the timing, it was all deliberate, and now they were planning mine. The room spun, the air felt thick, unbreathable. I stumbled back towards the stairs, my legs trembling violently, the overheard words searing themselves into my brain. Old bat. Obstacle. Adjusting medication. Another accident. Like Walter's. No mistakes this time. Back in my room, the door locked. I collapsed onto the chaise lounge, shaking uncontrollably. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying, sickening clarity. Miles's debts weren't just business failures. They were dangerous, involving threats. Serena wasn't just greedy. She was ruthless, calculating. Their kindness was a predatory lie. My life wasn't just being controlled, it was actively endangered. The rage I'd felt before returned, but now it was fused with a primal, icy terror. They wouldn't just weaken me, they would eliminate me. I had to get out. I had to expose them. But I was trapped, isolated, my every move potentially monitored. My performance had to be flawless, my planning meticulous. My survival depended on it. The days following that terrifying night were lived on a knife's edge. Every smile from Miles, every solicitous inquiry from Serena felt like a veiled threat. I played my part with the desperation of a cornered animal, amplifying my supposed confusion, my physical frailties. I accidentally spilled tea on Serena's pristine white carpet. I forgot Miles's birthday until reminded. I asked repetitive questions about the weather, the time, the meals, forcing them to engage in the tedious charade of caring for a declining mind. It was exhausting, degrading, but necessary. Their growing impatience, the flicker of frustration in their eyes beneath the mask of concern, told me they believed it. My sanctuary became the night, when the house settled into its uneasy quiet, when the red eyes of the cameras glowed impassively in the hallways. I became a different woman, fueled by adrenaline and fear. My mind felt preternaturally sharp. I moved silently through the darkened rooms, revisiting Walter's study, searching for anything. A clue they had missed, a message Walter might have left for me, knowing his life was in danger. The hidden notebook beneath the fireplace brick became my confidant, filled with coded observations. Nov 18, 1 a.m. M on phone, hushed tones. Mentioned Marco and deadline, sounded panicked. S researching sedative side effects online, saw search history briefly on her tablet left open. Nov 18, p.m. Found small screwdriver hidden under loose floorboard in pantry, not mine. M getting careless? Or planting tools? Nov 20, a.m. Adjusted beta blumper dose again. Claim Dr. Evans called with new instructions. Saved pill. The tampered medication terrified me most. I continued the dangerous charade of swapping the pills, hiding Serena's offerings, taking my correct dose from the tea caddy. What if I slipped up? What if she noticed? The slightly higher dose might not kill me outright, but it could make me dizzy, confused, vulnerable to another fall. Serena's clinical efficiency now seemed utterly chilling. I focused on Walter's safe. The combination derived from the scarlet letter felt right, but the risk of opening it again was immense. The study wasn't directly surveilled, but the hallway camera covered the entrance. Miles often worked late in the adjacent room. I needed a diversion, a guarantee of uninterrupted time. My secret email exchanges with Abernathy, conducted during risky dashes to the downtown library, disguised as permitted outings for fresh air, always shadowed by Miles, became my lifeline. He confirmed he had filed preliminary legal challenges regarding the forged bank authorizations Rick Miles had used, creating friction but not yet regaining my control. He had also spoken to Walter Henderson, whose statement about the argument and threats corroborated my fears. The police contact was aware, monitoring, but needed undeniable proof to act decisively, especially concerning Walter's death. The recorder, Beatrice, Abernathy stressed in his last email, if it exists, if it contains that conversation, that is our smoking gun. But accessing it is incredibly dangerous now. They suspect you. He was right. The atmosphere in the house had shifted. Miles was edgier, his charm fraying, revealing flashes of temper. Serena watched me constantly, her cool eyes missing nothing. They knew time was running out for them, too. Abernathy's legal nudges were making them nervous. They were becoming more desperate, which made them more dangerous. I decided to use their own tactics against them. I knew Miles was deeply superstitious, a trait inherited from his mother. Walter, aware of this, had occasionally played on it. The house had its quirks, drafts that seemed to whisper, floorboards that groaned like footsteps, occasional flickering lights Walter never bothered to fix. I began subtly amplifying these effects when Miles was alone downstairs late at night. A strategically placed open window to create a chilling draft near the library door. A loose connection on an old lamp near the staircase, causing it to flicker erratically. Small things, deniable things. It seemed to work. I noticed Miles seemed more strained, glancing over his shoulder more often, complaining to Serena about the house feeling creepy. It was a small victory, but it bought me slivers of time, moments when his guard was slightly down. The biggest challenge remained the audio recorder and the SD card inside the locket. I needed to listen to that recording, choppy. Abernathy had suggested a miniature card reader easily obtainable online, but how could I receive a package without Miles intercepting it? And using my laptop felt too risky. Serena occasionally asked to borrow it to check emails quickly. My chance came unexpectedly. Olivia, during one of her increasingly rare visits to the main house, left her school tablet behind. It was password protected, but Olivia, in a moment of teenage carelessness weeks ago, had complained about forgetting her complex password and mentioned the simple backup code she used, her cat's name, Shadow. That evening, after verifying Miles and Serena were deeply engrossed in a tense discussion in the living room, likely about Marco's deadline, I retrieved the tablet from the lost and found basket where Serena had dismissively tossed it. Heart pounding, I took it to my room, locked the door, and entered the code. Shadow. It worked. The tablet had an SD card slot. Trembling, I took the micro SD card from the locket, Walter's final, desperate message, and inserted it. Files appeared. I found the one dated October 17th. Holding my breath, I pressed play, keeping the volume barely audible. Walter's angry voice, Miles's wheedling, then threatening tone, the sounds of the struggle, the sickening thud, Miles's ragged breathing, the click of the door. It was all there, undeniable, chilling. Tears streamed down my face, for Walter, for the horror of his end, for the terrifying reality of my own situation. Quickly, using the tablet's limited functions, I emailed the audio file as an attachment to Abernathy's secure address using the anonymous account. Sent. A wave of profound relief washed over me, immediately followed by terror. What now? I deleted the email from the sent folder, wiped the browser history, and carefully replaced the SD card in the locket. I put the locket back in its hiding place under the blankets in the armoire, along with Walter's letter to Abernathy. I kept Walter's letter to me clutched tightly, my proof, my reminder, my talisman. Then I wiped the tablet clean of any recent activity log I could find. But had I been fast enough? Had deleting the file from the recorder itself been a mistake? Would they notice the tablet had been used? The house seemed to hold its breath. The email containing the audio file felt like a ticking time bomb. Had Abernathy received it? Would it be enough? My anxiety was a physical presence, a cold weight in my chest. Miles and Serena seemed different the next day, tense, watchful. their feigned pleasantries strained to the breaking point. Did they suspect something? Had Olivia mentioned her tablet being moved? Or was it simply their own desperation reaching a fever pitch as Marco's deadline loomed? Sharina brought my morning pills with an unnerving smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Feeling brighter today, Aunt B?" she inquired, watching me closely as I pretended to swallow the pills. The loose rug at the top of the stairs seemed even more pronounced, its curl almost deliberate. The wobbly porch railing felt looser when I stepped outside for a breath of damp air. They were setting the stage. The accident felt imminent. Abernathy emailed back that afternoon, confirming receipt of the audio file. Astounding, Beatrice. Horrifying, but potentially game-changing. I forwarded it to my police contact. They agree it warrants immediate action, but need a trigger. Probable cause to enter the house, secure evidence, ensure your safety. They can't act on the recording alone without risking its admissibility. Can you give them that trigger? Is there anything else? The ledger? The bonds? The ledger. The bonds. Walter's final secrets. I hadn't found them yet. Were they the key? I thought back to Walter's riddle. Crimson thread, first chapter's end. It had led me to the safe combination hidden in the scarlet letter. But perhaps it meant more. A crimson thread. Something connecting things. What else was crimson? Walter's favorite reading chair in the library was deep burgundy leather. He often read there late at night. That evening, feigning fatigue after dinner, I excused myself early. Once I was sure Miles and Serena were occupied, I could hear the low murmur of the television from the living room. I crept back down to the library. The room was dark, smelling faintly of old paper and leather. I ran my hands over Walter's reading chair, feeling along the seams under the cushions. Nothing. Disappointed, I sank into the worn leather, the silence pressing in. My eyes scanned the shelves opposite, filled with Walter's meticulously organized books, first editions, signed copies, obscure histories. My gaze snagged on a particular volume, one I hadn't noticed during my previous frantic searches. It was bound not in dark leather, but in deep crimson cloth, a history of textile manufacturing, an odd subject for Walter. And tucked inside, marking a page near the beginning, was a thin braided bookmark, a deep crimson thread. My heart leaped. Crimson thread, first chapter's end. With trembling fingers, I opened the book to the bookmark, then turned to the very last page of the first chapter. Taped carefully to the inside back cover, concealed by the heavy end paper, was a small, flat brass key. Old, intricate. Not a door key, a safe deposit box key, or something within the house. Where would Walter hide a second, smaller safe? Not the study. Miles had searched that obsessively. Think, Bee, think. Walter loved hiding things in plain sight. His collections. The grandfather clock in the main hall. It was an elaborate 18th century piece he'd bought at auction years ago. He was fascinated by its complex mechanism, always tinkering with it. Flashlight in hand, moving silently, I crept out to the grand hall. The clock stood like a silent sentinel, its pendulum still, its face dark. The camera mounted high on the opposite wall swept slowly back and forth. I waited, heart pounding, until its red light moved away, then darted towards the clock. A section of the ornate molding clicked inward, revealing a small keyhole. The brass key slid in smoothly. With a soft snick, a panel opened, revealing a slim leather-bound ledger. Walter's real ledger. I grabbed it, closed the panel just as the camera began its sweep back, and retreated to the relative safety of the darkened library. Flipping through the ledger pages under the beam of my flashlight revealed meticulous handwritten entries, not just business accounts, but details of the bearer bonds, their serial numbers, location splits between 2 safe deposit boxes in different cities under pseudonyms, and instructions for accessing them clearly intended only for me. It also detailed the loans to Miles, the threats, Walter's growing fear. It was everything: the proof, the motive, the means for my future security. But as I reached the last few pages, my blood ran colder still. Walter hadn't just feared Miles. He suspected someone else was involved, feeding Miles's greed, perhaps manipulating him. Serena, he'd written in the margin beside an entry detailing a large, untraceable withdrawal Miles made shortly before the final argument. She watches, too calm, too ambitious, the cold calculation behind her polished facade. Suddenly a floorboard creaked just outside the library door. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Not the heavy tread of Miles, but the lighter, stealthier step of Serena. Had she heard me? Seen the light under the door? I doused the flashlight, shoving the ledger under Walter's reading chair, pressing myself into the shadows behind a tall bookcase. The library door opened slowly. Serena stood silhouetted against the dim light from the hall, listening. She took a step inside, her eyes scanning the darkness. Then she turned and walked away, back towards the living room. A false alarm, or had she sensed something? I waited, scarcely breathing, until the house fell silent again, then retrieved the ledger, my hands slick with cold sweat. I had the final pieces: the ledger, the key, the knowledge of the bonds, the audio recording, the tampered medication. I had to get the ledger and the key to Abernathy, along with the second letter Walter had left. But how? Miles and Serena were clearly on high alert. Leaving the house again was impossible. My eyes fell on the old dumbwaiter shaft panel in the pantry, the one I'd checked earlier. It led down to the old cellars, and from there, a disused service tunnel connected to the guest house, and beyond that, close to the boundary wall where Mrs. Albrecht's garden backed onto mine. Mrs. Albrecht, my sharp-eyed, pragmatic friend, could I risk involving her? Taking the ledger, the key, and Walter's letter to Abernathy, I crept to the pantry. Prying the panel open silently, I lowered the precious items down the dusty shaft using a rope fashioned from tied-together scarves, securing them safely at the bottom. Then, using the burner phone, its battery perilously low, I sent a coded text message to Mrs. Albrecht, one we'd devised weeks ago for emergencies. Roses need urgent pruning. East wall. Midnight. A simple message, meaning I needed help, needed her to check the old tunnel entrance near her fence at midnight. It was a desperate gamble. Would she understand? Would she come? Just as I slid the pantry panel back into place, I heard them, Miles and Serena, their voices low, urgent, coming from the hall. They were heading towards the stairs, towards my room. The final confrontation was upon me, whether I was ready or not. "Aunt Bee?" Miles's voice, thick with forced concern, echoed up the grand staircase. "Still awake? Serena made you some warm chamomile tea?" I didn't answer, retreating quickly, silently, back to my bedroom, locking the heavy oak door behind me, my heart hammering against my ribs. The ledger and key were safe for now, hopefully on their way to Abernathy via Mrs. Albrecht and the tunnel. But I was still trapped. The evidence was out, but would help arrive before they broke down my door. Their footsteps reached the landing. A pause. Then the gentle, insistent turning of the door handle. locked. Beatrice? Serena's voice now, sharper, laced with impatience. Darling, open the door. Are you feeling quite well? You seemed rather agitated earlier. Agitated? I was fighting for my life. I backed away from the door, clutching Walter's letter, the one addressed to me, my last connection to his voice, his warning, like a shield. My eyes darted around the room, seeking refuge, a weapon. The heavy brass lamp, the fireplace poker leaning against the hearth. Don't be difficult, Miles cajoled, his voice losing its smooth veneer, roughening with frustration. We're just worried about you. Let us in. Silence. I held my breath, listening. Thud. A heavy weight hit the door, making the wood groan. They were trying to force it. Miles, quickly, Serena hissed from the hallway, before someone hears. Another thud, harder this time. A crack appeared near the lock, splintering the aged wood. Panic surged, cold and electric. My fingers scrambled for the panic button beside the bed, the one Walter had installed after a burglary scare years ago. I pressed it hard, praying the signal reached Abernathy's security team, praying they understood the urgency. Crack. The door jamb splintered. The lock was giving way. Miles grunted with effort from the other side. I could hear Serena urging him on, her voice tight with frantic greed. I hefted the brass lamp, its weight awkward but substantial. It wouldn't stop them, not really, but I wouldn't go down without a fight. They wanted the frail old woman. They would find the cornered survivor instead. The door burst inward with a final violent crash, slamming against the wall. Miles stood panting in the doorway, his face contorted with rage and exertion, his eyes wild. Serena pushed past him, her face a mask of cold fury, her eyes scanning the room, searching. Searching for what? Me? Or the hidden assets they still believed I possessed? Where is it, Beatrice? Serena demanded, her voice dangerously low, advancing towards me. The ledger? The codes? Walter's little nest egg? Where did he hide it? Get away from me, I whispered, raising the lamp defensively, my voice trembling despite my resolve. Miles laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Playing games, Aunt Bee? Still. It's over. Just tell us where it is, and maybe this can end peacefully. The threat hung heavy in the air, underscored by the splintered door, the fury in his eyes. You mean, I retorted, finding a surge of strength fueled by pure adrenaline, like it ended peacefully for Walter. That hit home. Miles flinched. Serena's eyes narrowed into icy slits. You know nothing, she spat. He was a foolish old man who got in over his head. He knew about you, Serena, I pressed, clutching Walter's letter. He knew you were manipulating Miles, feeding his desperation. He wrote it all down. Serena lunged then, not bothering with pretense anymore, her hands clawing towards the letter I held. I stumbled backward, swinging the lamp clumsily. Miles moved to block my retreat, trapping me between them and the window. The two-story drop yawned behind me. Just as Serena's fingers brushed my arm, the wail of sirens sliced through the night air, growing rapidly louder. Red and blue lights flashed erratically across the bedroom walls, painting their shocked faces in garish strobes. What the? Miles breathed, turning towards the window. Serena froze, her eyes wide with disbelief, then narrowed with dawning horror. The panic button, she hissed at Miles. The old fool actually used it. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs, boots echoing on the oak treads. Authoritative shouts cut through the tension. Police! Ashworth Manor. Stay where you are. The bedroom door, already hanging off its hinges, was thrust fully open. 2 uniformed officers entered swiftly, weapons momentarily raised, their eyes assessing the scene. The splintered door, Miles and Serena blocking my path, me clutching a brass lamp, shaking but defiant. Behind them, panting slightly, stood Mr. Abernathy, flanked by 2 private security guards. "Beatrice, thank God," Abernathy exclaimed, pushing past the officers. "Are you harmed?" "No," I managed, lowering the lamp, my legs suddenly weak. "No, but they tried." "We know," Abernathy said grimly, gesturing towards the officers, who were now efficiently handcuffing a stunned Miles and a spitting, furious Serena. "We received your email, Beatrice, and the package Mrs. Albright retrieved from the tunnel entrance just after midnight. The ledger, the key, Walter's letter to me, and the audio file." He held up the small USB drive contained within the locket. "We have everything." Miles let out a strangled cry of disbelief. Serena stared at the USB drive, her face draining of all color, her carefully constructed composure finally shattering into raw, terrified defeat. The crimson thread had not only led me to the truth, it had woven the rope for their downfall. The ensuing hours, days, and weeks were a blur, a disorienting kaleidoscope of police interviews, legal consultations, insurance adjusters assessing the damage to the door, and the overwhelming task of dismantling the life I had known within Ashworth Manor. The house itself felt violated, tainted by the violence and betrayal that had occurred within its walls. The air hung thick with the residue of fear and suspicion. Abernathy handled the legal storm with calm efficiency. The audio recording from Walter's study, corroborated by the detailed entries in the hidden ledger, Walter's warning letters, the evidence of the tampered medication, and my own testimony, built an insurmountable case. Miles and Serena, facing charges ranging from fraud and conspiracy to elder endangerment and potentially accessory to murder, their lawyers attempted plea bargains, defenses based on diminished capacity for Miles, fueled by debt and desperation, and coercion for Serena, claiming Miles manipulated her. But the evidence of their calculated cruelty, especially Serena's methodical medication tampering and her cold-blooded plotting overheard in the library, undermined any claims of victimhood. Walter Henderson, contacted by Abernathy, provided crucial testimony about Walter's state of mind in his final months, his fears about Miles, and the volatile nature of their relationship. Mrs. Albright, my steadfast neighbor, also gave a statement detailing her observations of Miles and Serena's increasingly controlling behavior and my own visible distress, corroborating my claims of isolation. The investigation into Walter's death was officially reopened. While the audio recording didn't capture the definitive act of pushing him, the preceding argument, Miles's clear threat, "You won't live to stop me," and the subsequent sounds strongly suggested foul play rather than an accidental fall on a polished stair. The wheels of justice, though grinding slowly, were firmly in motion. Meanwhile, I focused on untangling the practical threads of my life. With Abernathy's help, I secured the safe deposit boxes Walter had indicated in the ledger. Inside, nestled amongst legal documents, were the bearer bonds, a substantial sum, carefully anonymized and protected, Walter's final provision for my security. There was also a more personal item, a small sealed portfolio containing early sketches in watercolors I had painted in my youth, works I thought lost decades ago. Walter, despite his secrecy, had kept them, treasured them, a small, poignant reminder of the complex man he was, capable of both frustrating obfuscation and quiet tenderness. Sorting through Walter's possessions at Ashworth was emotionally wrenching. Every object seemed imbued with a double meaning, a symbol of our shared life, but also a potential clue he might have left, or a reminder of the secrets he kept. The collections he cherished felt alien to me now. The heavy furniture oppressed me. The house itself felt like a mausoleum. I decided, with Abernathy's support, to sell it, along with most of its contents. It was time to close that chapter, to step out of the long shadow cast by Walter Holloway and the darkness brought by Miles and Serena. Olivia was perhaps the most difficult thread to untangle. The revelations about her parents were devastating for a 16-year-old. She was placed temporarily with court-appointed guardians while custody arrangements were determined. Her paternal grandparents eventually stepped in. Our initial meetings were strained, filled with silences, her confusion and hurt palpable. I didn't push. I simply offered a quiet, consistent presence, answering her questions honestly when she asked, acknowledging the pain without making excuses for her parents. Slowly, tentatively, she began to open up, sharing her own unease about her parents' behavior over the past year, snippets of conversations she'd overheard but hadn't understood. We started building a new relationship, fragile but based on a truth her parents had denied her. Healing is not a linear process. It's more like weaving, pulling together disparate threads of grief, anger, fear, and resilience, slowly creating a new pattern. My therapy sessions became crucial, helping me navigate the complex PTSD resulting from the gaslighting, the isolation, the threats, the profound betrayal. Talking about it, naming the abuse, helped strip away the lingering self-doubt Miles and Serena had so carefully cultivated. Moving into the bright, modern condominium downtown was liberating. Sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating walls I painted in warm, cheerful colors. I filled the space not with heavy antiques, but with comfortable furniture, my own evolving pottery pieces, vibrant textiles, and countless pots of herbs and flowers on the balcony, overlooking the bustling city park. The silence here wasn't echoing or watchful. It was peaceful, resolute. My friendship with Walter Henderson deepened. We met for weekly lunches, attended concerts, visited museums. He shared more stories about Walter, the brilliant innovator, the demanding boss, the man wrestling with his own demons and secrets. Understanding Walter more fully helped me make peace with our complex marriage and his final, desperate attempts to protect me. Walter Henderson himself became a quiet pillar of support. I leaned into my art. The pottery classes became more than a hobby. They were a form of meditation, a way to channel emotion into tangible form. My hands, once trembling with fear, grew steady, shaping clay into bowls, vases, sculptures that were uniquely mine. I even set up a small studio space in my spare bedroom, rediscovering my old watercolors. Thanks to Walter's hidden portfolio, felt like reconnecting with a younger, more hopeful version of myself. I began painting again, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, capturing the light on the park trees, the faces of people in the coffee shop, the intricate patterns of my own healing journey. I also dedicated time to Olivia. Our visits became more regular, less supervised. We explored the city together, visited galleries, talked about her future. She was planning on college, interested in social work perhaps, subconsciously seeking to understand or counteract the dysfunction she had witnessed. The shadow of her parents remained, a difficult burden for her to carry, but she possessed a quiet strength, a core of integrity that gave me hope. Our bond, forged in the aftermath of trauma, felt different from a typical grandmother-granddaughter relationship. Quieter, perhaps, more deliberate, but deeply felt. The epilogue of Miles and Serena's story unfolded in the stark reality of courtrooms and news reports. Miles received a significant prison sentence, convicted on multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, endangerment, and ultimately manslaughter in Walter's death. The audio recording, while not capturing the final push, proved overwhelmingly damning regarding his intent and the preceding struggle. Serena, convicted for her role in the conspiracy and fraud, particularly the medication tampering, received a shorter but still substantial sentence. Their fall from grace was complete, their names synonymous with avarice and betrayal. Ashworth Manor was sold, its contents auctioned off, the proceeds used to cover legal fees and restitution, the remainder going into a trust for Olivia, managed by Abernathy. Justice, in its slow, methodical way, had prevailed. My own epilogue continues to be written each day. Now 73, I live a life that is quiet, yes, but quiet in the way of deep rivers, not stagnant ponds. It is filled with purpose, connection, and the quiet joy of creation. I exhibit my pottery at local galleries. I mentor young readers at the library. I travel, sometimes with friends, sometimes blissfully alone. The fear has receded, replaced by a vigilant awareness. The betrayal left indelible marks, scars on the soul that may never fully fade. But they are reminders not of victimhood, but of survival. The crimson thread, initially a clue to darkness and danger, ultimately became the thread I used to weave a new life, a life of strength, independence, and quiet, resilient beauty. I broke free. I survived, and in doing so I finally truly claimed my own story.